Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. All right, good evening, Belly Up Fantasy Live. How's everybody doing out there in internet land tonight? Hope you're doing well. It is Wednesday night. I am Chase Thornton coming to you once again from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar back home. If you saw me on Sunday morning, you saw me at a friend's basement bar, but I'm back in the home stomping grounds, back in my element, raring to go. And we're going to look at all of the the Week 7 games here in prime time this week. Once again, not a real great slate. I thought that the early season, some of the matchups they had scheduled looked like they were going to be really good. Of course, nobody realized that, ahead of time that the Broncos were going to be on prime time literally every game, it seems like, and they were going to be what they are. But nevertheless, we will preview the slate, the Thursday night game, the Sunday night game, the Monday night game tonight. We'll have a drink or two and hopefully some fantasy wisdom will get shared along the way. So welcome in, and it's good to have you here. All right, let's get started here as I've got my first one to get started. Let's look at tomorrow night, the Thursday night game, the Saints and the Cardinals. Now, Saints are going to be visiting Arizona. Arizona's a 1.5-point favorite here. The over-under is 44. Which probably seems, I guess, to me about right, 44 points. I mean, I guess it all depends on who we get and who we see on offense for the Saints, unfortunately. Now, last week, the Saints, we'll start with them. They hosted the Bengals. Of course, they lost 30-26 in a game that really they probably should have won. They probably should have had that wrapped up. Andy Dalton, of course, got the start again with Jameis Winston still battling that back injury to some extent there. And Dalton, he didn't play all that poorly. He didn't shoot the moon or do anything, but 17-32, 162 yards and a touchdown until they really needed it. And they get down to the end and their final drive there, they really probably could have cemented that thing away if they could have picked up first down. They go 3-and-out for the first time since the very first series of the game, and it's kind of all over from there. Then the Bengals took over. So we're looking at the quarterback situation for the Saints. Andy Dalton, there's been some rumors this week here that even if Jameis Winston is ready to come back, that they may leave Dalton in the starting role there and let him be the game manager type that he's been for just about his whole career. I don't think anybody's ever necessarily looked at Andy Dalton as a weapon. He's never been necessarily a game winner. He's been a game not loser, at least from my opinion. But now Jameis Winston here looks like he's going to be healthy and ready to go possibly for Sunday. So we've got some question is who's going to start, Dalton or Winston, Dalton or Winston. I'll tell you right now, if we want to take a look at how they've performed, I mean, we've basically got, just about the same amount of run out of both of them. Basically, you could call it 3 games apiece out of 6 right now. And they're both 1-2. And neither one of them has really, separated him or himself from the other in terms of winning this job. Jameis Winston has thrown for a few more yards, has thrown the ball, more often in the 3 games that he's played. I don't think that they have wanted Andy Dalton to necessarily try to be throwing the ball. But then also keep in mind again, too, Dalton's 3 games here are the last 3 games when they've been without just about every one of their receivers. Landry has missed time. Thomas has missed all that time. Olave has missed some time. It hasn't necessarily been the full complement of weapons there for Andy Dalton in these last 3 games. But regardless, when I look at it, if it's from my standpoint, again, if I were qualified to make these decisions, I'd be getting ready for a game on Sunday rather than sitting here talking to you. But I believe that Jameis Winston is probably the better choice for them if they want to be a dynamic offense, if they really want to have an offense that can be not just capable but actually feared. I think Jameis Winston gives them the better chance of that between the 2 men that they have there right now. Winston is going to be more capable of pushing the ball down the field. We know he likes to chuck it. Remember his 5,000 yard year, 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. I mean, the guy, if nothing else, the guy can rear back and let it rip. And they've got a good receiving core to do that with if everybody could get healthy. Unfortunately, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the reports right now. Michael Thomas is going to miss again. He's already been ruled out. Jarvis Landry has already been ruled out. Troutman, their tight end, nominally they're starting tight end, but really they've got kind of a 2.5, 3-headed monster down there. Troutman's going to miss. They're all going to be missing tomorrow night. And so we're looking at hopefully Chris Olave coming back from concussion protocol. Now it looks like he's not quite cleared yet. He's not all the way out of the woods, but it does look, all signs point to the fact that they would have Chris Olave back. Which would be good for them. Last week, I mean, Traquan Smith was their de facto number one receiver. He did catch a touchdown, but again, Traquan Smith isn't, he's not going to be threatening to anybody. Nobody's game planning around Traquan Smith like they might have to for Chris Olave, like they have to for Michael Thomas. Now, Juwan Johnson was a name that got a lot of run. I know last week we talked about him Sunday morning as somebody that Andrew, my co-host on Sunday mornings, liked a lot in his daily lineups. He was plugging Juwan Johnson in there at the tight end position. And he didn't have a bad game. 4 catches out of 6 targets at 61 yards. 41 yards. I mean, okay. Just as good a dart throw as any for a tight end position. But now coming up this Sunday, I just told you all these guys that are going to be out. They're going to be missing. They're going to be missing Thomas. They're going to be missing Landry. They're going to be missing Troutman. Troutman is the other one who takes the targets at the tight end position there. Remember, Taysom Hill for them qualifies as a tight end in a lot of leagues, but really he does not necessarily line up almost ever as an actual tight end, such as you and I would think of it. Okay, he's only got 1 target on the year. He's caught one ball for 2 yards on the season. Otherwise, all of the damage he's done, all the points that he's scored, all of the highlights that you'll see out of Taysom Hill have come when he's either, running from under the quarterback position or split out wide and running sweeps and doing things like that. He's a gadget player. He's listed as a tight end because I guess we need to stick him somewhere where it's not quarterback, since they claim he's not a quarterback for them anymore. But Troutman is the other one who gets actual snaps and actual looks, targets at the tight end position. With him out, with Thomas out, with Landry out, now if they can find themselves somehow down in the red zone, that might leave, Juwan Johnson as a good play, as a sneaky play this week. We are in the middle of the bye weeks. You're going to be missing, Dawson Knox isn't playing. The Bills are out. Tyler Higbee, another top tight end right now, he's out because the Rams are on bye. Irv Smith, if you've been streaming guys or if you've, whatever reason, picked him up, he's out. Dallas Goedert, who I have across several leagues, is out. So there are some top tight ends out this week, and you may find yourself wanting to stream one. Juwan Johnson might be worth a good shot. He's going to have some opportunities, and it's a good matchup, to be dead honest with you. The Cardinals give up average of 15.2 points, half PPR points, that is, to opposing tight ends. That's the second worst rate in the league. So it's a good matchup for a tight end if we can get an actual tight end some looks. Now, don't take that for, there we go. I can start Taysom Hill. Like I said, Taysom Hill is not going to be taking traditional, what you and I think of as tight end snaps. He's not necessarily affected by this second worst against tight ends statistic that I just gave you from the Cardinals. Taysom Hill is much more looked at. You should look at him much more like a running quarterback who gets very, very few snaps every game. Okay. And in that case, it's not a great matchup. The Cardinals actually fare about, they fare about the 11th worst in the league against quarterbacks. It's not quite as good a matchup for a quarterback as it is a tight end there. If you have to play a tight end, a streaming tight end, Taysom Hill is worth a dart throw just because he's got that explosive ceiling. Juwan Johnson is worth a dart throw this week simply because it's a good matchup for him, and there's opportunity there with everybody that's going to be missing for them. Let's going elsewhere on the Saints here. Alvin Kamara. Now, if you've got Alvin Kamara, obviously you drafted him to be a starter. You drafted him possibly to be your number 1 overall running back, hopefully your number 2. But if you've got Kamara, you are expecting him to play. You drafted him to play, and you're probably not in a great position, especially with bye weeks now. You're probably not in a great position to sit him unless it's some kind of absolutely necessary situation or something else wonky goes on in your lineup where you've got a much better lineup than most of the rest of us. Kamara last week, 19 rushes, 99 yards, not a bad day at all. Didn't score a touchdown, but he did add another 6 catches out of 9 targets for 25 yards, and that's more of what we want to see from Alvin Kamara. It's what we've expected to see and come to expect to see from him. My take on Alvin Kamara this year, I was not big on Alvin Kamara coming into the year because I didn't think that it was going to be a good thing for him to have Jameis Winston as his quarterback. And I think that if you look at how he's performed, especially this year, I think the numbers bear that out. Now, if you look, he was not great, in my opinion. He was not very good last year. In the first half of the season, he was very streaky, very up and down when Jameis Winston was healthy and when he was playing. And then, of course, he battled things all the last half of the season, and we know how that ended for Alvin Kamara. This season, coming into the year now, Jameis Winston started out, he was their quarterback. If you want to take a look at, basically, Kamara since he's missed some time too, he's played 2 games with Winston, 2 games with Dalton out of the 6 games that they have played, and out of the 3 games that each of those men have started. In the 2 games that Alvin Kamara started with Jameis Winston, he has scored 7.6 and 7.3 fantasy points. There are a lot of guys out there on the waiver wire who you didn't draft in the bottom half of the first, top half of the second round, who can get you 7.5 points PPR. Okay. But in the 2 games he's played with Andy Dalton, including last week, he's got 23.4 and 18.4 fantasy points in those 2 games. Andy Dalton's style, I think, fits Alvin Kamara better. I think he's looking for Alvin Kamara as an active target. When Jameis Winston is in there, like I said, I think Jameis Winston wants to chuck it. I think his instinct is to look and to try to chuck it. I don't necessarily think he reads. I don't think he reads the offense the same way that Andy Dalton does. And I'm not saying that he can't read the offense. I'm saying I don't think he reads the same way Dalton does. And for whatever reason, it just does not seem like Alvin Kamara is on Jameis Winston's radar. Why one of the top overall targets and one of the top overall weapons in football wouldn't be on your radar is beyond me. But again, I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm not playing this weekend or getting ready for it. If Dalton plays, I think Kamara's a much better play. If Winston plays, you probably still have to play Kamara, but temper your expectations for him. If I'm a Kamara owner and if it looks like Jameis is going to be healthy and he's going to be in for the rest of the year, I'm hoping that I see a great game out of him tomorrow. And then I may honestly try to sell pretty high. And that might sound a little counterintuitive in terms of that. If he has a great game with Winston, great. See, he can. I don't think it's going to be the consistent production, the consistent looks in the pass game. I don't think we're going to see that out of Kamara if Winston is the long-term starter and if he's healthy enough to be the starter going forward. So keep an eye on that for tomorrow night. If it's Winston, like I said, dial back on your Alvin Kamara love. If it's Dalton, I fire him up just as confident as you ever have been with him. As far as Olave goes, I think if Olave plays, he's going to be the target monster in that offense. He has been their leading receiver here now. He's come of age here in the first 6 months. And if he plays, he's a start. So I would say you have to start Kamara, start Olave. I'm going to suggest that if you are in need of a tight end, you could look at Juwan Johnson or take the chance with Hill and the giant upside. That's probably about it for them, though. Now, on the other side of the field, we've got the Cardinals here. And the Cardinals last week visited the Seahawks. They lost. They only scored 9 points. They didn't have they did not have a good performance. Anybody who watched that game, honestly, that game probably wasn't as close as 19-9. Let's just look. Kyler Murray, 23 out of 37, 222 yards. Didn't have a score. Lost a fumble. Threw a pick. He did run 10 times for 100 yards, which is nice, and that's what we want to see out of Kyler Murray. But throwing the ball, it was not good. He just hasn't had a real great year for that yet. Again, his top weapon, DeAndre Hopkins, has been out. He lost his other top weapon partway through the game with Marquise Brown now going down with an injury. So, I mean, if you've got Kyler, again, you drafted him to be your starter, and he is, for better or worse, he is probably still a top 12, type option. He's a good running option. He's going to have that running floor, and he's getting his top receiver back. He's getting DeAndre Hopkins back. He's off of his suspension. He's ready to go for tomorrow. I expect to see a decent day out of DeAndre Hopkins tomorrow. So I start Kyler, obviously, unless you have Lamar or somebody else that's obviously way better. You're not going to have Josh Allen this week. He's on bye. But start Kyler, start DeAndre Hopkins. I'm firing him up from the get-go. I don't think there's any reason not to, especially in light of the Marquise Brown injury. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with what's going on there, Marquise Brown suffered a foot injury. It looks to be a non-surgery necessary fracture, I think they called it. Looks like he may miss a month or more, but it does not appear to be as serious as they first thought. And it looks like he will be able to come back here at some point this season. But for the time being, Marquise Brown is out, and he had been their top receiver, especially with DeAndre Hopkins out. With Hop back, you're going to fire up Nook. Rondale Moore. Now, Rondale Moore is interesting. He's missed a little bit of time here, too. He hasn't necessarily been all that healthy. Rondale Moore, I wasn't big on last year. I wasn't necessarily big on him coming into this year. But what I would like to see, what I would love to see out of this, the big hope was always that, okay, when Hopkins is back, we'll have Hopkins, we'll have Brown, we'll have Moore, and we can take Moore and Brown and move them in and out. They can both play on the outside. They can both play in the slot. Who's going to run what route? How are we going to deploy them? We got Nook, probably just put him on the left and run him downfield like they seem to do all the time. But now, obviously, the Brown injury hurts that, and we're not necessarily going to see that. However, we did get the big news of this past week, one of the two big news stories of the past week, the weird Robbie Anderson saga, the in-game fight with his position coach and getting kicked out of the game eventually in the second half by his head coach, and then subsequently getting traded almost as soon as they could, getting traded to the Arizona Cardinals. So now what we're looking at, and probably not this week, I'm not necessarily high on Robbie Anderson coming in and trying to be a hero week one for them. It's not Madden. Okay, you can't just make a trade and plug a guy in. He's got to have some time to get used to the system and the quarterback and get the timing and even learn some play calls, okay? He'll probably run a few routes tomorrow if he's active, but I'm not going to expect anything out of him right away. But here's the hope going forward is that they can keep DeAndre Hopkins on one side. They can put now Robbie Anderson on the outside on the other side and keep Rondale Moore in the slot. If Rondale Moore's in the slot, I think he's a much more dangerous weapon that way than if he had to be the all-time outside receiver. His versatility, being able to go outside, move inside, I like that. But with Robbie Anderson now on the outside, DeAndre Hopkins on the outside, and putting Rondale Moore in that slot with Zach Ertz underneath that, they still have a very potent passing offense, and they still have weapons there. And then keep in mind, like I said, Marquise Brown may be back by the end of the year. That could be real fun if they can actually figure it out there. Of course, one of the big problems with Arizona right now is their backfield. James Conner, who came into the season with high hopes, and everybody had high hopes for him based on the volume that we figured we were going to see from him. The way they deploy him, they do use him they have in the past used him in the pass game. He did prove to be a good runner. I don't think anybody thought he was going to repeat the insane amount of touchdowns he had last year. But in terms of his deployment and the fact that he was kind of not really competing with anybody anymore in that backfield, a lot of people had high hopes, including myself, for James Conner. I've got him in several leagues. I've got a little bit of exposure to him. And it's been frustrating because we haven't been able to use him. And even when we have been able to use him, we haven't been able to get a whole heck of a lot out of him. James Conner is questionable for tomorrow night. If he can and can't go, if he can go, I'm almost more apt to shy away from using him this week to see how he comes out of it. If he can't go, then we're going to see, looks like Eno Benjamin again. And Eno Benjamin, he was okay last week. nothing great, but he did catch all 3 of his targets for 28 yards. He had another 37 yards rushing. He's not quite, they have not shown that they will use him in quite the same manner and he, in quite the same explosive way that they like to use James Conner. But if you are in a pinch, if Conner can't go tomorrow and you picked up Benjamin or you have Benjamin, he might be worth some run. Honestly, the Saints don't do too terribly bad against running backs. But, again, game script wise, what are we looking at here? Well, if you think that the Cardinals can run away with this one because of the Saints and what you think the Saints will do, well, then, okay, maybe Benjamin's a little bit worthy of more run. I, for one, want to steer clear of the backfield, probably. I mean, if Connor's starting, if he's playing, if you don't have greater options, then yeah, you can probably play him because you know what he can do if he's healthy. Murray, I would start in this one. Like I said, I'm firing up D-Hop, I'm firing up Rondale Moore, and I am liking Zach Ertz in this one. It's not a great matchup for tight ends. The Saints defense, they only give up an average of 5 points a game against opposing tight ends. But Zach Ertz is a bit of a special case. I mean, he's good, and they're going to use him. They're going to use him down to the red zone. They're going to use him between the 20s. And especially now with D-Hop coming back, you'll have to look deep. And they may try and deploy Ertz a little bit differently than they have if they think they have to with the Marquise Brown injury and with how they want to use DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm still firing up Zach Ertz as a top 10, top 12 option. I think he's one of the few guys in the league that I feel comfortable kind of set and forgetting at tight end. You're not going to get the consistent numbers that Andrews or Kelsey give you, but Ertz is pretty much a startable guy week in, week out. Another interesting note from the Arizona Cardinals, they signed Rodrigo Blankenship. Rodrigo with the specs, the rec specs. Rodrigo Blankenship got signed to their practice squad here this week. And what they're hoping to do is that if Prater can't go, they're hoping Prater can go. And if Prater can't go, then they've got Blankenship. They can call him up from the practice squad like we've seen several other teams do, like we've seen the Cardinals do. They released Matt Amendola. They are going to go with either Prater if he can or Blankenship if he can't. And that's a good matchup from a kicking standpoint. If you're looking for a kicker to stream this week with Matt Gay out, with Tyler Bass out, with Joseph out, if you're looking for a kicker to stream, whoever gets the start tomorrow night for the Cardinals has got a great matchup. The Saints give up almost 13 points a game to the opposing kickers from a fantasy standpoint. They've been a defense, I should say, that has let teams get down into the scoring zone enough that kickers get a ton of opportunities against them. So if you get an opportunity if you need a kicker this weekend, if you can pick up Prater if he's out there available, or if you want to pick up Blankenship, monitor who's going to start for the Cardinals tomorrow night and fire that guy up in your lineup against the Saints tomorrow night. Also, the Cardinals defense, I think, is going to be a good play. Saints give up the 5th most points against opposing defense DSTs. So I would definitely look at putting the Cardinals in there. They're a good play this week. I think they're a top 11, top 12 type starting type play this week. All right, let's take a minute here. We'll go and hear from our first sponsor here from Manscaped. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to take a look at the Sunday night game between the Steelers and the Dolphins.
Football is back, baby. We're back to seeing Mahomes sling beautiful balls all over the field, and your friends at Manscaped are here to help you sling your beautiful balls all season long. With Manscaped's state-of-the-art tech, we'll have your weapon looking more loaded than the AFC West. Football may be rough, but your ball care doesn't have to be with Manscaped. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Meet the best valued bundle yet for the Manscaped Pocket Rockets, the Platinum Package. At quarterback, the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, a wily vet who makes sure the unit is running smoothly and scoring nonstop with proprietary advanced skin-safe technology The lawnmower limits mistakes and protects the ball. Plus, it's waterproof, so the weather conditions are no issue. At running back, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, built to bust through all the right holes. A hairless nostril just helps it keep a nose for the end zone. On the offensive line, we have our unsung heroes, the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner, the Trent Williams and Corey Lindsley of Sack Protection, standing strong to keep your boys fresh and clean through all 4 quarters. At wideout, the cleanest duo in the league, the Ultra Premium Body Wash and Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo plus Conditioner. With their rugged scent, they attract both the ball and all the ladies in the crowd. Plus, these two leave your skin and scalp feeling more hydrated. That means more plays on the field and less water breaks. At tight end, the product makes your end look tight. Manscaped's anti-chafing boxer briefs, a dedicated jewel pouch to increase ball handling and a cool, steady vibe thanks to their moisture-wicking fabric. On defense, there's only one thing you need, the aluminum-free Ultra Premium Deodorant. With refined cologne, quality fragrance, it keeps sweat and locker room scents from making any ground. Plus, it dries clear, so the opponent won't even know what hit them. To top it all off, we throw in the best coach in the league, the Shred Travel Bag, as a free bonus. Built to hold the team together, this travel-size bag has a fumble-resistant zipper. This has got to be a Super Bowl winning roster, but don't take my word for it. Go to Manscaped.com and get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. That's 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Manscaped for turning your player into an MVP.
All right, we are back. Thanks to Dan Mader for that read there, and thanks to Manscaped for getting us all ready here. As I told you on Sunday, if you watched Sunday, I had the opportunity to go to the Autumn Brew Review for the Minnesota Craft Brewers Guild over in the Twin Cities this past weekend. Got to rock the kilt, got to bust out my Manscaped gear and make sure I could wear that kilt with pride the right way, so thank you to them. We got a question here real quick before we move on. Daniel Kirylyuk, that's my first take on that name. I don't know, Dan, if that's right or not, but that's my first shot at it. He wants to know Waller or Hill at tight end. Unfortunately, right now, Dan, I'm waiting to hear on this one too, because Waller here, and he's talking about the tight end from the Raiders there. Waller is not practicing right now. He did not practice today. Hasn't practiced this week. He had the hamstring injury. Now, the good news is he's had almost 2 weeks here by game time. Waller will have had almost 2 weeks to heal up, but unfortunately right now he's not practicing. And the problem with this trying to make this call here now is that you've got Hill, who can play tomorrow and will be playing tomorrow. And Waller we won't know about here now until like Sunday, or at least until we get different news or better news here on things. Unfortunately, I would really like to hold out and wait, and hopefully Darren Waller plays. I feel more comfortable with Waller's floor, and we know that he has not the crazy ass explosive ceiling that Hill has for different reasons. But Waller is a tight end, one of the few tight ends in the game who can go out and get you 20-some, 30 points in a game. And I like his floor a lot better. It doesn't look like they're going to be without Davante Adams, at least for this coming game. Everybody who saw the Davante Adams debacle, pushing the photographer after the game, after their loss the other night, that is in the legal system right now. He has been charged. That is going through the court system, legal system, and they are not going to make, the NFL is not going to make any call on that until after that legal situation resolves itself. So they are going to have Adams. They are going to have Renfro, looks like, but we do not know about Waller yet. If I knew Waller was going to play, I'd tell you to play Waller. Without him, go ahead and plug Hill into your lineup if you can, if you want to. Like I said, it's going to be high floor, low ceiling play when you're talking about Taysom Hill. He had that explosion the week before, and then this past Sunday he really didn't do a whole heck of a lot. You never know with him, and some of it's game script, dependent. But either way, my druthers is I would wait and see if Waller can play. If Waller can't play, honestly, if you picked up Foster Moreau at the last second, his backup, that wouldn't be the worst streaming option either if you had room for it on your roster. Foster Moreau has actually done well filling in for Waller in the past. He was inactive in week 5 there, but again, they were off in week 6. He's had a chance to heal up, so sounds like I'm waffling a little bit on your question. I'm going to tell you not to count on Darren Waller this week since he's not practicing yet, but I'm telling you I'm not crazy about plugging Hill into my lineup unless it's a Hail Mary type play and you've really got to make some hay. All right, so let's move on here. Let's look at the Sunday night game here between the Steelers and the Dolphins. Steelers are visiting Miami here. Miami's a 6.5-point favorite. Over-under on this game is 46.5. And, I don't know. I don't know if anybody feels like that's too high or not. I'm not sure the Steelers will score that much. I think for the Dolphins, whether the Dolphins can hold up their half of things is going to depend on whether Tua can play. Steelers last week shocked the world, beat the Buccaneers, the host of the Buccaneers, 20-18 Steeler victory there. We've all seen the film by now of Tom Brady balling out his offensive line on the sideline, and that Steelers beat them even with problems at quarterback. Kenny Pickett was in the middle of a Kenny Pickett-esque game, I guess, or a Pittsburgh-esque game, I could call it. But left the game with a concussion. He's still in the concussion protocol. They have said now, though, despite Trubisky coming in and completing 9 out of 12 for 144 and a touchdown and winning that game for them in the fourth quarter, they've already come out and said that if Pickett clears concussion protocol this week, he will start for them Sunday night against the Dolphins. So if you've got Kenny Pickett, if you're hoping for that, hopefully you can make some backup plans in case. But if Pickett can clear the concussion protocol, he will play. They're not trying to have any quarterback controversy now that they've gone to Pickett. It looks like they're going to want to stick with him. Either way, no matter who plays, I'm not necessarily wanting to start either one of them. It's a good matchup for a quarterback against the Dolphins. They give up the 6th most points to opposing quarterbacks. But again, we don't necessarily know which one of these quarterbacks we're going to get at the moment, and we don't necessarily know if we're going to get whoever does start, if we're going to get that guy the whole game or not. I'm not overly crazy about starting either one of those guys in fantasy. If you've got to do it as your second quarterback, super flex, or 2 quarterback or whatever league, then okay, yeah, take the shot with it. But here's hoping that you're not relying on either one of those guys for your number one. At running back, Najee Harris, 14 rushes, 42 yards. Again, the guy he has not been efficient. The line has not run blocked all that well. They've actually pass blocked a lot better than I thought they would, which could bode well for Pickett going forward here if he can stay healthy. But, he did catch 2 out of 3 balls last week for only 7 yards, but a score. So he salvaged his fantasy day that way. Najee Harris is a guy that I had across a couple of leagues too. Again, I was high on his volume coming into the year. And we are not seeing the same kind of volume we saw from him last year, either running the ball or especially in the pass game. Remember, he had that one game last year where he had 19-some targets, but even if you take that game away, he has not seen the same targets the first month and a half of the season here, a month and a half or so, as he had last year. They're not getting the ball to him like they did last year. All of his numbers last year were basically volume dependent. He is not efficient. He does not average 4.0 yards a carry. He's just not that. They have not got that kind of offense right now, and he does not appear at this point in his career to be that kind of a runner. If you've got Harris, okay, it's not a bad matchup. I mean, the Dolphins give up 10th most points to opposing running backs. Some of that's probably contingent on game stripped, I would say. But Harris, I've got Harris. I think I've got Harris in 3 leagues. One league, I'm starting him because I have Henderson on a bye, and who else? Who else do I have? I've got Henderson on a bye. I know that, and I wasn't crazy about start. Oh, and I've got Connor, and I'm not sure if Connor's going to play yet. If Connor plays, I may swap him out. It's not a great position to be in. Half hurt Connor or Najee Harris this year. but I drafted Harrison Connor as my top 2 in that league, and I'm hurting. And it's my home league, one of my home leagues too. But I'm right now, that's the only league of the 3 I have him in that I'm playing him in. The other 2 leagues, I have Breece Hall in one of them. I have Kenneth Walker in 2 of them. That's who I'm playing him behind. Definitely. Breece Hall looks like he may be a top 10 running back for the rest of the year. Kenneth Walker looks like he's at least the top 20 type, if not higher. But yeah, I am not playing Harris if I have a chance to at all. If I have a chance to get out from underneath him, if I can somehow trade him. I did have him in a 4th league, and I was able to package him, I think, with Alan Lazard and one other guy. I packaged him for Nick Chubb. Listen, I will take that trade off all day long, even if it costs me at wide receiver a little bit, because Harris just has not had the juice this year. If you've got to play him, play him. It's an okay matchup. I don't really recommend him. Like I said, I'm not playing him myself unless I have to. At the receiver position, though, okay, we've got Deontay Johnson has been, for the most part this year, Deontay Johnson has led the Steelers in their targets. He's been their leading receiver. And then past that, we've got a bunch of weapons, but we don't never know who's going to get used when. Now, Pat Freiermuth missed last week. And, you know, Freiermuth he had his breakout year last year. It looked really good. Everybody was like, hey, we got a new tight end on the docket that we can all use in fantasy. Somebody we can put on the radar and check out. And then he's really struggled this year with his injuries. I don't know if he's going to play or not. If he does play, if he does play, the Dolphins, it's a decent matchup, but again, you can't count on it. You can't count on it. Plus, we don't know who's necessarily going to start at quarterback for them. But at receiver, Deontay Johnson, I think, is a safe enough play. He's got wide receiver 1 talent right now. He's probably mired in about wide receiver 2 playability because of the situation there. They need to figure their pass game out. They need to figure their whole offense out, to be dead honest with you. But Deontay Johnson is startable. He's playable. Past him, we've got Claypool, who has been the subject of some trade rumors this past week, and George Pickens. Now, both of them have looked pretty good when they've actually gotten their moments. The problem is from week to week, you don't know which one of those 2 is going to be essentially the number 2 receiver on that team. 1 week they give Claypool, like last week, he caught 7 out of 7 targets for 96 yards and a touchdown. That's a good game. That's a Chase Claypool game. And that's the kind of stuff he can do for you. He's big target, nice target, and he gets open. He can fight for balls. He's a good complement on the other side of Deontay Johnson, who's not necessarily all that big. But, you never know from 1 week to the next whether they're going to give Pickens that volume or whether they're going to give Claypool that volume. And so, if you're looking for somebody to flex, I think probably between the 2, I lean Claypool right now. However, like I said, monitor that situation because Claypool's been the subject of some trade rumors. Now, a lot of those trade rumors come from people just looking, and like me, who write about this and talk about this for a living and are looking around the league and speculating, hey, maybe they'd like to get rid of Claypool for somebody. They've got Pickens, great. There's no guarantee that he's really available. But if he is, and if he does go somewhere else, monitor that situation. I would not drop him if he does get traded. Depending on the situation, it could be an upgrade for him. If he got traded, it would be a massive upgrade for George Pickens. But in the meantime, Johnson makes an okay play. Like I said, he's got wide receiver 1 upside, but I would play him more as a wide receiver 2. I would flex Claypool, and if you have to pick Pickens, I would say he's a meh-K pick this week. My standpoint, I wouldn't play Freiermuth even if he plays right now. I'm not going to trust that he's there and that he's back and ready to go until we see it. Other side of the field, the Dolphins. Last week started off, Skylar Thompson gets a start for them last week, and I don't know if anybody watched this game, but they could not have done more to sabotage that kid's first start even before the injury happened. He gets them down in the Vikings half of the field, and they had at one point they had 5 penalties on one drive, he kept getting them inside the 20, kept getting them inside the 20, kept getting them inside the 20. And every flipping play, it was a different, it was, oh, somebody held, offensive pass interference. Oh, they jumped. Oh, ineligible downfield. It was a comedy of errors. And I was like, give the kid a chance. He was playing well. It did not look like the game was too fast for him. It did not look like the game was too big for him. And he actually, like I said, he had them in scoring position repeatedly before he got injured. Left with the thumb injury there. Teddy Bridgewater came in, and Bridgewater, yeah, I mean, he put up good raw numbers, from a fantasy standpoint at least. 23 out of 34, 329 yards. He threw a couple of scores, did throw a couple of picks, unfortunately, which cost them big. And he was sacked 5 times, which didn't help anybody out. But Tua got cleared. Tua has been cleared now. And he is practicing with the team, and all signs point to them starting him on Sunday night against the Steelers. Now, Tua is the best he's the best opportunity on that team from a quarterback standpoint, but he's going to be a risky play this week. Okay. The Steelers it's a good matchup. It's a very good matchup. Steelers give up the 7th most points to opposing quarterbacks in fantasy, but Tua is a risky play. I mean, it's 2 games in a row where he's suffered what looked to be head injuries. I know they said the back thing on week 1, and the first week, I don't know the truth of that. I don't think any of us are ever going to really know the truth of that. But he has suffered 2 pretty big injuries back-to-back in back-to-back games. Even if he does play, I'm pretty wary of starting him. But if he does get to play, that's a massive upgrade, I think, for everybody on that offense, even Raheem Mostert. Mostert last week, 14 rushes, only 49 yards. He caught 1 out of 2 balls for -1 yards. But by this point, Raheem Mostert has taken control of that Dolphins backfield. You can forget about Chase Edmonds. You don't have to worry about him unless Raheem Mostert gets hurt, which is a possibility. Let's be honest, everybody. But Myles Gaskin didn't get any run last week. Salvon Ahmed came in, I don't think he had an offensive snap in the game. I know he didn't get any opportunities. That is going to be the Raheem Mostert show until and unless he gets hurt. Okay. And so with that being the case, I mean, Raheem Mostert is playable and pluggable into your lineup right now as a running back 2 or a flex at the worst. But if Tua gets to play, that's going to lift, that rising tide is going to lift all boats there. I mean, look at what Hill and Waddle did last week, even with their 3rd and 2nd string, and who knows what they call them, quarterback in there. Tyreek Hill was 12 of 15 last week for 177 yards. Now, granted, you might say, okay, yeah, well, the backup quarterback's looking for the best player on the field. Well, that's great, but I mean, Jalen Waddle had 6 out of 10 for 129. These guys are both they're both top 10. I think Tyreek is wide receiver 3 overall right now in full PPR. I think Jalen Waddle is wide receiver 7 right now. You've got 2 top 10 guys on the same team who have done that for by now almost half of the time that they've been on the field this season has been with backup quarterbacks. If Tua can play, if Tua gets to come back, those guys, I mean, they're must start anyway. If Tua comes back, the sky's the limit for the both of them. So you're firing up Hill, you're firing up Waddle. It's a good matchup for Tua if you have to, if you want to stream him, if you've got him as a second guy. I don't really want to trust him as my number 1 guy right now. But again, if you're looking for somebody to start in place of Josh Allen, if nobody else is out there, if people dumped him on the waiver wire because of the injury, you may be able to find Tua. Mike Gesicki. Here's somebody that's worth talking about real quick here. Mike Gesicki had just about his best game as a pro last week. He caught 6 out of 7 balls, 69 yards, and a couple of scores. And this is the kind of game that Mike Gesicki can give you. And this is the kind of thing that we have said about Mike Gesicki, and we're always waiting for Mike Gesicki to do. Mike Gesicki is a great big slot receiver. He's not even necessarily a tight end. And that's part of the reason that Durham Smythe and Adam Shaheen before that and other guys have always seemed to get kind of shoehorn in and elbow in on his playing time. Mike Gesicki is a talented receiver and is a talented player and a weapon on the football field if they want to use him as such. Now, they have not been inclined to show anybody anything that says that they want to use him consistently. And he has, again, repeatedly come up in conversations on shows like this and on the Four Letter Network and all that about, about being a possible trade candidate. If they were to trade him somewhere else, I mean, he may have some better value in a different offensive system. But he's worth a streaming look this week, especially if Tua plays. He's worth a streaming look. Even though, the Steelers are pretty good against tight ends. Gesicki, he's got that kind of talent. He's got that weapon, that weapon capability like that. So if you're missing Dawson Knox and he was your starter, if you're missing Goddard this week, if you're missing Smith, then go out and, you could take a shot on Mike Gesicki, and he offers you this kind of production. You may be able to get a 20-point day out of him, a 15, 20-point day out of him. He has that kind of ability. I wish they would use him a little more consistently. Some of it probably is a lot game script dependent too, because he's not really a great blocker. So if they want to run the ball a lot, he's probably not going to be in there a whole lot. But if they're going to be throwing the ball all over the yard, then he'd be the one to play. So last note that I want to put in there then on this Dolphins-Steelers game then is that the Dolphins are a good defensive play this week. I think that the Steelers, they give up the 9th most points to opposing defenses. We don't know yet whether it's going to be Trubisky or Pickett, but either way, this is an offense that has given up points to opposing defenses. I have the Dolphins as a good starting type play this week. I have them as at least a top 10, if not possibly a top 5 type play. Dolphins are a good defense anyway in terms of that kind of thing. And then when you get the matchup with the Steelers, it all comes together beautifully, right? So give it a look there. So again, kind of running down the line there. Tua, it's risky, but it's a good matchup if you want to play him. Hill and Waddle, obviously, are must starts. I don't have to tell you that. Gesicki is worth a streamer. The defense for the Dolphins is worth a shot. On the other side there, the Steelers, I don't really want to play either one of their quarterbacks if I can help it. I don't want to have to play Harris. My recommendation for the whole team is probably Deontay Johnson as a wide receiver 2 at this point. And that's what we're looking at from that game. We're going to take another break here. We're going to listen to True Classic Tees. And then when we come back on the other side, we'll talk about the Monday night game and run down a couple of injury and availability notes here before we take off for the night.
Football is back, baby, and our new sponsor, True Classic, wants you to look and feel your best even after a couple of brewskis or going full force on your fantasy football draft. Sure, it's football season, but it's also butt to couch season. Luckily, True Classic has the absolute best fitting clothing a man can buy. Snug in the arms and chest with a little extra space in the torso, their t-shirts are designed to keep you cozy and highlight your best assets no matter what you're up to. So if your special someone is upset that you're watching football all day, at least you can look good doing it. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men find the perfect fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at TrueClassic.com. Almost all men's t-shirts are designed to look good on skinny models with six-packs, but most of us aren't packing anything but a few beers. Fellas, you are wearing the wrong clothes. True Classic tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's time to highlight your best attributes with a t-shirt you can always confidently throw on. It's about time to get your fit together, so upgrade your wardrobe with True Classic and get 25% off at TrueClassic.com with promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Free shipping included on purchases over $100. That's 25% off at TrueClassic.com with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. If there's one bet you should make this football season, it's on True Classic. True Classic, look good, feel good.
All right, we are back. Thanks to that word from True Classic Tees. We're going to talk about the Monday night game. Again, another great matchup here. Bears at the Patriots. And I suppose there are people who actually like the Bears that are excited to watch this game. There are people who actually like the Patriots who, want to watch this game. But, ouch, I'm just not excited to see this whatsoever. I don't think this is going to be any kind of a contest. The Bears are coming off that 12-7 exhibition between them and the Commanders, losing them to the Commanders at home 12-7. The over-under in this game, the Patriots 8-point favorites. The over-under for this game is 42.5. And if anybody can tell me why this game's line is at 42.5 points, because I don't get it. I don't see where the points are coming from. I don't see the Bears being able to score anywhere near what they will have to score for this game to reach 42.5 points. Because I don't think the Patriots are going to blow these teams. This is not going to be the same score there was last week for the Patriots, where it's 38-15 over the Browns. That was a heck of a game. But as we said last week, Bears losing to the Commanders 12-7 at home. Fields 14 out of 27 for 190 yards and a score with an interception. He did run 12 times for 88 yards. He does have a rushing floor, but again, he's just not right now a starting quarterback in fantasy or in regular football, in my opinion. If you've got him, I hope you're using him as a number 2. But, David Montgomery returned. He was 15 rushes for 67 yards and no scores. Khalil Herbert, after barely seeing the field the week before, runs it 7 times for 74 yards, and again looks like the much more explosive, much more dynamic player. Why they continue to hammer away on Montgomery without giving Herbert a little more play is beyond me. I think that should be a much more even split in that backfield than what we're seeing. It wouldn't necessarily be better from a fantasy standpoint if it were, but I think it would work much better for them if it were, because I think Herbert is, like I said, I think Herbert has more dynamism in that offense. Dante Pettis, 4 catches out of 7 targets for 84 yards and a score, his second score of the year. He's actually been maybe their more consistent receiver. He's been every bit as consistent as Mooney has been this year. Mooney, again, saw 12 targets, caught 7 of them for 68 yards. We're still waiting for that big breakout game from Darnell Mooney. And honestly, folks, I don't know that we're going to see it. He was dropped in one of my leagues, and I went and picked him up just because I was like, yeah, he's got so much talent. You almost have to, hang around and wait for it if you can afford it. And when I didn't have to have him as a starter, I was like, okay, if I've got the bench slot. I'm not sure how much longer that bench slot's going to be open for him. There are a lot of guys out there that I can get, 10 to 12 points off of. I don't necessarily need to feel that's an untouchable bench spot right now, and you shouldn't either. It's just not a passing offense, folks. And because it's not a passing offense, anybody who you're counting on in that offense to catch passes is not going to give you the return that you want them to give you. And that goes for their running backs as well. Part of the charm of having a Montgomery or a Herbert is that, they caught passes last season for the last few years they have. And, anybody who you're counting on to catch passes from this offense is just not going to give you the return you want. It is not a passing offense. It is much more a rushing offense. And that's by a little bit by design. It's a little bit by necessity, because I just don't think they have the ability right now to be that kind of offense, to be that kind of passing offense. Cole Kmet caught 1 of 3 targets for 15 yards. He didn't score again. I don't want to have to necessarily talk about him again from a fantasy standpoint this season, because he has not been fantasy relevant. So there's no sense in giving him a lot of ink or digital print or airtime. So we are not going to talk about Cole Kmet from a fantasy standpoint. Now, Velus Jones Jr., he's come back, and he's looked pretty explosive. He's looked athletic. He's looked like the guy that they thought they were getting when they drafted him. Unfortunately, he's also still a rookie in the NFL, and he fumbled a punt, which cost them dearly toward the end of that game. There's just not a lot of fantasy prospect here on this team. Not from a passing offense standpoint. They're not going to be Montgomery is not going to be a running back 1. He's going to be a low end running back 2, and if he finds the end zone, he might jump up into higher running back 2 occasionally. Herbert has almost no standalone value right now, unless and until Montgomery goes down again. There's not much here, folks. Mooney is rosterable at the moment. He's not necessarily playable. If you're in a really, really deep league, Pettis, okay. Velus Jones has no fantasy value and no interest for anybody outside of dynasty purposes right now. If you've got a deep dynasty bench, he is young, and like I said, he does look like he has some explosive talent and ability. and they do look like they may scheme some things for him in terms of using him to run the ball and gimmick plays and things like that. So he's got some dynasty stash ability, but man, in redraft formats, you're not looking at pretty much anybody on this team right now. The same goes for Fields in terms of, dynasty capability. You're not starting Fields this week unless you absolutely had to in a two quarterback format. I'm fading Montgomery and Herbert, even though it's a decent matchup against the Patriots defense. Because like I said, I don't see the game script going well for them. I don't see them being able to just sit back and hand the ball off and run the ball. And because of that, they're going to have to throw. And when they throw, it's a good recipe for 3 and out quite a bit. Mooney, again, if you absolutely have to, he actually hasn't looked as bad over the last several weeks. Over the last 2-3 weeks or so, 3 weeks, he's looked more usable than he was over the first 3 weeks of the season. He's actually started to pick up a little bit of a rhythm with Fields, but I have no optimism for Darnell Mooney. And again, Cole Kmet, just no, we're not talking about him, so stop bringing him up, Brandon. All right. On the other side of the field, Patriots, again, they're coming off at 38-15 shellacking of the Browns. Bailey Zappi, holy cow, kid. Have a day. Good. What a cool surprise that kid was, right? Coming in with Hoyer getting the injury right away, the concussion right away against the Packers. Zappi has come in and ever since then, he has looked like an NFL quarterback. Not highly touted, came from the small school. Now, yeah, he threw a ton of touchdowns in college, and he was draftable, a draft pick. But man, for a kid that didn't have a ton of hype coming out of college, 24-34, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 118.4 quarterback rating in that game against the Browns. Yeah, and that's not a terrible defense, guys. It's not a great defense. I don't think it's as good as we thought it was going to be, but they're not a team that you would think a third string quarterback would be hucking up 38 points on him with 118 for quarterback rating. Ramondre Stevenson, 19 rushes, 76 yards, a couple of scores, caught 4 out of 5 balls for 15 more yards. Ramondre Stevenson is what we thought Ramondre Stevenson was. It's just, are they going to keep giving him the ball like that? If they continue to give him the ball like that, if they continue to let him have that number 1 running back capability, Ramondre Stevenson could be a top 10 type running back the rest of the year. But again, it sucks. We've seen this before. We've seen guys that have gone off and had these games before and been good and looked like, oh, that guy might be the guy in New England, and then Bill Belichick hits and the guy barely sees the ball the next week, or he gets shuffled down the depth chart and now he's all of a sudden third string again for the rest of the year. If they keep handing Ramondre Stevenson the ball, he is dynamic. He is capable. He can do just about everything that you want a running back to do. He's gotten better in pass pro from what I've read and the things that I've seen. Ramondre Stevenson could be real special. And if you picked him up, if you drafted him, you probably drafted him as your number 3 running back because of the uncertainty with Damian Harris being there. And I was certainly higher on Harris in terms of, I don't know that I was higher on Harris, but I was lower on Stevenson from a draft position standpoint coming into this season because of because of the presence of Harris and because of what we know Bill Belichick's teams tend to do with running backs. But I'll tell you what, man, if you picked up Ramondre Stevenson as your number 3 running back, you're sitting pretty right now if you still have your top 2 guys in play, because you've given yourself a big time weapon to use either at your flex position or for your bye week. You're not missing out on anything by having Ramondre Stevenson as a running back in your lineup right now. Hunter Henry, actually, we had a Hunter Henry sighting finally, 4 out of 7 for 61 yards and a touchdown last week. I am not going to be jumping on the Hunter Henry train. I don't think Hunter Henry is any worse a player than he ever was before, but from a fantasy standpoint, he's just not reliable. Now, this is a good matchup for him. It's an okay matchup for him, I should say, because I think that the Bears can be had. Now, they don't give up a ton of points to opposing tight ends. They don't give up points to opposing pass catchers, period. If you're looking at rankings and points against for your defenses, the Bears don't give up a ton of points to opposing quarterbacks and receivers and tight ends. I would counter that by saying it's not necessarily because of any innate capabilities of the Bears defense. I would say it's because the teams haven't had to throw them for very long. Teams have been able to throw for a little bit, get up, and then run the ball and pound it right down their throats. Keep in mind, the Bears give up the 7th most points to opposing running backs. So again, I look for this game. The Patriots get up early and then just keep pounding Ramondre Stevenson into the skulls of the Bears. So take those rankings in terms of how many points the Bears give up to opposing pass catchers. Take those with a grain of salt because people haven't had to throw on them. Doesn't mean they can't. It just means that they haven't had to a whole heck of a lot. And so you may not see the volume out of your pass catchers when they're facing the Bears. Doesn't mean that they can't strike. And if you've got those guys like Tyler Lockett who are lightning in a bottle types and not necessarily volume dependent, you can play those kind of guys against the Bears. And so I think that some of the Patriot receivers like Tyquan Thornton, who had his first 2 touchdowns of his career last week, 1 rushing, 1 receiving, guys like that, guys like Jacoby Myers, who aren't necessarily always going to get a ton of targets anyway in an offense like the Patriots, but still can produce. I think guys like that are playable against the Bears. So I think Myers and Thornton are playable against the Bears here this week, especially like in, say, DFS. They may be a little bit cheaper plays for you than some other guys might be. I'm fading Henry and Jonnu Smith a little bit, but they're definitely, again, Henry's the better of the two if you're taking a shot for tight ends, if you're streaming tight ends, or if you're trying to pick up and replace a guy on bye this week. Henry's the better of the two. Jonnu Smith is a wonderful player. He's a dynamic player on the actual football field. On our digital football fields, he is way too inconsistent and does not see the volume to be usable in any way, shape, or form. So if you're choosing between the two, you want Hunter Henry. I think you can look elsewhere this week, though, and fill in for either your streaming purposes or your bye week purposes. But definitely this week you are playing, if you can get them or if you have them, you are playing the Patriots DST against the Chicago Bears. They are a top play for me. I went and everywhere I could pick them up, I did. And I am starting them right away. I spent money on them, actually, and I do not typically do that. I actually spent money. I spent fab on them in a couple of leagues this week to try and get them, and it worked because, again, I think with an offense that has been as unexplosive, as inept, as eminently stoppable as the Bears have been this season, and with a defensive mind like Bill Belichick and a team that has been pretty middle of the road or better on defense against everybody anyway, I think they are a heck of a play this week against Chicago. I am not worried at all about what the Bears are going to do to the Patriots. If you can still pick them up or if you have them, you are playing the Patriots defense. They are, in my opinion, they may be about the most sure thing you can get this week. The Bears are one of those teams I'm chasing as I'm streaming defenses. I used to be in the mindset that, I wanted to pick a defense that was highly ranked and keep it and go for it. But defenses are just, they're just, unless you've got some wonky scoring settings in your league, defenses are so unpredictable week to week. The best defense in the league all of a sudden can get had from a fantasy standpoint. Maybe it doesn't even look that bad in a box score on the real game, but from a fantasy standpoint, defenses are so hard to predict. And the worst defense in the league can accidentally fall on a ball in the end zone, and all of a sudden they're a top 3 play for the week when no one wanted them. So, I used to be that guy. Okay, I'm going to look at who's ranked in the top 10 for defenses. Okay, hey, this team's available. They're ranked number 4. I'm going to grab them. But then I find out, then you look at that week and they're playing the number 3 ranked offense in the league. They're playing, last year's Rams, or they're playing the Bills or the Chiefs or whoever. As you're streaming defenses, one of the strategies you can employ is to not just look at necessarily like who are the good defenses that are available, but who are the terrible offenses and who's playing against them. And it doesn't even necessarily matter if a defense hasn't been all that great from a fantasy standpoint. If you've got a team that has not been good on offense and has given up points to opposing DSTs, those are the kinds of teams that you can target. You can chase the Bears. Okay, I've been chasing the Bears all year because I'm just not convinced on their offensive ability whatsoever. The Panthers this year are another team that you can chase across the board because they just have not shown anything from an offensive standpoint. So this week, again, if you can get the Patriots, plug them in, you and I will be, I think, very happy when the week ends with what we're going to pick up from our DSTs there if we've all got the Patriots. All right. Like I said, the Bills, the Rams, the Vikings, the Eagles, they're all on bye this week. So keep in mind that's a lot of high-powered offensive weapons that we're missing. We're missing out on Allen and Singletary and Diggs and Davis and Knox and the Bills defense from Buffalo. We're missing out on Cooper Kupp. We're missing out on Darrell Henderson now as possibly the new mostly down starter at running back. We're missing out on Tyler Higbee. We're missing out on Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins, who's been a startable quarterback so far this season, and Adam Thielen. We're missing out on the Eagles and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders, who's finally getting used like Miles Sanders should be flipping getting used in his last year, possibly in an Eagles uniform. We're missing out on Jalen Hurts. There's a lot of weapons out this week, okay? On top of that, now we've got our injury news from last week. Talked about a little bit earlier, but Marquise Brown with his foot injury looks like he's going to miss about a month. So you are going to have Marquise Brown was ranking right at the top of usage charts and everything else for wide receivers. He was a big part of that offense. He's not going to be available to you for about a month. Dak Prescott has been cleared. He's come back. He's throwing, and all accounts are that they plan and he plans to play on Sunday. Again, monitor that situation because honestly, Jerry Jones said 13 minutes after Prescott was injured, he'll be back next week. So monitor that situation. But there is an outside possibility we see Dak Prescott back this week. If not, one more week at Cooper Rush, which is not great for the Cowboys' weapons, but it hasn't been the killer that we thought it might be. Cooper Rush has been a pleasantly capable surprise, again, as I like to say. For the Packers, Randall Cobb, high ankle sprain last week. He's probably going to miss a month or more. One of the most trusted targets for Aaron Rodgers. In theory, that would open up a little bit of opportunity for Amari Rodgers. In practice, I don't think it's going to. I think that Aaron himself has moved on from Amari Rodgers and any of the hype that he may have had. If Christian Watson can play, they may use Christian Watson in that slot position, which would be crazy. Big giant guy like that, the slot would be really fun to throw to. But one other thing then to go along with that Randall Cobb note is that Sammy Watkins was designated to return, and his practice window has opened as well. So that's something to monitor from a Packers receiver standpoint. Plus, again, they are in on every rumor for anybody that's a free agent or a possibly available wide receiver. So keep an eye on that situation. Kendrick Bourne for the Patriots left the game early the other day with a toe injury. If he can't play again, Tyquan Thornton may be somebody they look to actually use as a weapon. Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers, they've really split their opportunities for their wide receivers very evenly all year, between Parker, between Bourne, between Myers, between whomever they've had in there. But with Thornton now healthy, and Thornton is the fastest, quickest, probably the most dynamic player they have on that wide receiver core. If Bourne can't play, that may really jazz up Tyquan Thornton's short-term worth here. Again, Pickett is still in concussion protocol. We're waiting to see from him whether or not he can go. If not, it'll be Mitch Trubisky again. Cameron Brate, scary situation. If you saw that last week, stretchered off the field with a concussion and a neck injury. Again, something to monitor. I would not expect him this Sunday. If he can't go, they still have Cade Otton, who has actually gotten a little bit of run here this year and has not looked too bad. He may have been the heir apparent anyway, but he may have to take the mantle sooner rather than later, depending on how long or if Cameron Brate misses how much time. Again, Tua Tagovailoa, all signs point to him playing on Sunday. Take that with a grain of salt or for what it's worth. Again, I'm wary of that situation, even if he goes. Mac Jones is being listed as possible to play again this week. Again, I don't know if you rush him back with the way that Zappy's been playing. I would hold him off. But and then DeAndre Hopkins is back. He's off suspension, and he will play tomorrow night. And in my opinion, fire him up right away. Let's go. If he was not missing because of any kind of injury or anything like that, we know that Kyler Murray loves to throw it to him. F it, Nook's down there somewhere. He's going to throw it up over the top. That's going to do it for us, I think, this week. I'm going to remind you, again, give me a follow on @STTChaseFFB. Check us out there on bellyupfantasysports.com. You can find articles from me, the Blitz Pickup, every week. I go over usage notes, snaps played and target share percentages and who's taking control of the backfields in Miami and in San Francisco and in wherever. So check that out every week. I also have the Thursday Night Football preview that'll be out tomorrow morning. Check out all the other great content. We have rankings from myself and several other colleagues, start sit type articles and studs and duds and a ton of great stuff over there. Check us out over there. Like I said, bellyupfantasysports.com. You can find me, Andrew Leduc, and hopefully Kevin Wilson will be back on this Sunday morning. We'll be previewing all the games for you Sunday morning before kickoff and letting you hear all the latest news and who's available and who's not. Thanks for joining me again, everybody. I very much appreciate it. And again, I will see you Sunday and hopefully see you right back here next Wednesday night. So, Slan Java.